When I was reading the comments on the video I made about these albums that might not be as bad as we remembered, some people suggested Lulu to me. So then I thought that an album like Lulu, I can't put it in a video like this because albums like Lulu cannot be saved. And then I said, wait a minute, are there any other albums like it? Albums that are so bad. They have no hope, no ray of sunshine, breaking through the darkness, no redeeming qualities whatsoever. So I searched and I found such albums. I knew most of them, but not all. I had heard most of them, and some I was hearing for the first time. Here, I can't promise you that everything is from very well-known bands. But I can promise you this. It's not a case of so bad, it's good. Here we're talking about so bad, it's actually bad. My comments will be more concise, and of course, since you already know what I believe, there won't be any verdicts. It goes without saying that opinions are personal, once again, and even here, any disagreement is welcome as long as it remains civil. Let's see what came out. In the mid-90s, our beloved Korthon and his band made another stylistic change, and why not? This time, they were leaving behind black metal and Viking metal and going for something more organic, old-school thrash metal. And if on 1994's Requiem, well, okay, let's just say it kind of worked. Here, things are not like that at all. As I read somewhere, it's like a group of untalented musicians recording with studio equipment they bought at Lidl after consuming generous amounts of Tetra-packed wine. First of all, Mr. Forsberg's vocals are terrible. They were never that good to begin with, but at least on the Epic albums, they complemented the music and became part of it. Here, they are absolutely horrendous. We're talking about auditory torture. Then, we move on to production. Clearly the worst in the band's history, which is very difficult, considering what they were doing at the beginning of their career. The drums are ear-splitting and the guitars are terribly weak and bland. The whole thing sounds like it was recorded in a toilet. Maybe I'm stuck up because the band is playing something close to hardcore punk? No way, guys. There's a lot of hardcore punk that sounds really good and I particularly like. And besides, I think the album sounds punkish by mistake due to the abysmal production. Oh yes, don't look for it on Spotify, because fortunately for us, and for the band's legacy, there's nowhere to be found.
Why do you invade me?
This must be the fourth time I've mentioned it in these videos. The 90s were a very strange period for the classic metal bands of the 80s. Now, we're having one of the most talented guitarists in hard rock history trying to play grunge. Honestly, what did you think it would happen? And mind you, it's not like George Lynch didn't get involved in the project. No, he was completely in control. He even changed the band's classic logo on the cover. And in fact, Don Dokken took the opportunity he was looking for to kick him out of the band, saying that the purpose of the album was to destroy Dokken, even emphasizing that Lynch had openly stated this in an interview. So what do we have here? George's solos are shining as always. The rest is the problem. The style doesn't suit Don's vocals at all. Absolutely not at all, resulting in 52 minutes of music from which nothing sticks in your mind. The songs sound flat and colorless, completely misplaced and disconnected from each other. For 95% of the album, the band keeps trying something that isn't for them and doesn't work out. In the 5% where the old Dokken make an appearance, e.g. Bitter Regret, you immediately spot the difference. It was a real shame that this album happened because it gave Don Dokken the excuse he was looking for to kick out George Lynch. Times changed, but the guitarist never returned. Another album that has been removed from Spotify, and this is for everyone's good first and foremost for the band itself. And it doesn't surprise us at all. since the entire period with singer Thomas Rosenmerkel, which was also called Neo Destruction, 2 EPs in this album, has been completely disowned by the 2 original band members who were present. Everything I wrote earlier about Dawkins and the weird 90s applies 100% here as well. Hearing this, I think we all understand even better how good Creator's Endorama album was. Compared to this, it looks like an absolute masterpiece. And to think that the bass and drums are more than acceptable, I would even call them interesting at times. What completely ruins the impression once again are the vocals, which are truly annoying. To me, they sound like a heavily processed imitation of Corrosion of Conformity. As for the music, it's a run-of-the-mill, colorless, and odorless groove metal that primarily imitates Machine Head, occasionally Pantera, with some playful experimentation thrown in for good measure. Generally, Germans are not good at all with genres like these, and thankfully the guys from Destruction realized it and radically changed course after this album. For those who don't know, Cryptopsy hail from Montreal, Quebec, and are one of the most important names in the history of technical/brutal death metal. Here we have one of the common patterns in the albums of this video, the change in musical style. And in fact, here the band is approaching the very much hated style of deathcore. So, is the album maybe misunderstood and unfairly criticized due to the change in style and the inclusion of things like melodic riffs or clean vocals? Trying to be as objective as possible, I would say no. First of all, this isn't even deathcore. It's brutal metalcore, if such a thing exists. Secondly, the clean vocals aren't bad because they're clean. They're objectively bad. Every time we hear them, they destroy everything. Thirdly, the sound is simply awful, and the musical choices are completely confusing. Almost exclusively blast beats on the drums, guitars that don't actually play riffs, but simply follow a constant pattern that is supposedly characteristic of the core genre, and the addition of keyboards that are barely audible and serve no purpose. Practically, the band does everything you're supposed to do when playing whatever it is they're trying to play, and they fail miserably at all of it. Now we're getting into murky waters. You see that the Metal Archives rating is missing, right? The band simply isn't on the site because they are not considered metal. Typically, of course, the genre they play is recognized as metalcore with elements of deathcore and nu metal. If you add to that a generally non-metallic image, you understand that this is a band that more traditional metalheads simply hate on general principles. So, we need to be careful. Again, is this so bad because of its content, or because it belongs to the band it belongs? Well, believe me when I'm saying it, this is a truly awful album for any fan and under any circumstances. Imagine a combination of truly cringe vocals that alternate between death growls, metalcore screams, and almost rap-like clean vocals in a way that seems random, with breakdowns, and even more breakdowns. Every time an interesting idea, a riff, a melodic line, or something like that is about to appear, the endless one-note breakdown immediately follows. The compositions are incredibly simplistic, standardized, boringly repetitive, and ultimately completely uninteresting. The same old, same old, same old. A half-hour record seems to last twice as long, and in the end, you don't remember anything.
Running pretty fast.
It's never a good sign when one of the people who played on the album, guitarist Parker Lundgren, says there are tracks that made it in there he had never heard in the studio, and that he only heard for the first time when the final product was released. Singer Jeff Tate said that drummer Scott Rockenfeld and bassist Eddie Jackson were more involved in this album. while they later responded that Tate cut the songs they suggested and included others written by external collaborators, friends of his. The album title is quite descriptive of its content, although that was probably not the intention. A constant and chaotic change of musical styles from a band desperately trying to sound modern and contemporary. In the end, we have a mishmash of electronic sounds, saxophones, U2, a bit of grunge, dance rock, alternative metal, some solos, and cringe lyrics. The band's decline has no end. Well, that's not true, since this album literally and figuratively broke up the band, leading to Tate's departure, colossal legal battles over the name, and ultimately the band's return to a more conventional and tried-and-true style.
I am the root. I am the progress.
When Metallica's collaboration with Lou Reed was announced, no one knew what to expect. One could say there was a strangely charged atmosphere of anticipation. We're talking about Lou Reed, a guy who once released a double album that was practically 4 tracks, with no structure or vocals, just guitar noise. Now, if we had known beforehand what happened during the recordings, we might have suspected what would eventually come out. Basically, we had Metallica and Reed jamming over some demos of his that had been written for some unfinished plays by a German guy. The final result shocked the world just as much as Metal Machine music did 36 years ago. We have a series of songs where we see Metallica playing some very interesting themes, over which James Hetfield sometimes screams a series of unintentionally hilarious lyrics. So far, so good, a lot of what we're hearing could actually work. The problem is that over this backdrop, Lou Reed sings a little and narrates quite a bit of some of the worst vocals you've ever heard, which sound completely out of place and discordant with what's playing in the background and ultimately ruin it. A band with quite a few similarities to Emure. With the possible exception of their first 2 albums, the rest of the Californians' career was met with hatred and ridicule from a large majority of metal fans. So it's another case where I need to be very careful and judge the album for what it is, not for what it supposedly represents. So what do we have here? A band that tries to experiment by introducing some new metal elements, imagine 1999 Korn, into their deathcore sound. There's no problem with all of that. The problem starts with how it's executed. The songs sound completely abstract and unfocused. You can't quite understand what the band is trying to achieve with each one, where it comes from and where it's going. They end up sounding unimaginative, confused, and boring. Meanwhile, the clean and especially the high-pitched vocals attempted by singer Eddie Hermida are truly awful. You are tempted to just stop listening every time they come up. In short, style changes are just as difficult and tricky for most of the modern bands too, not just for traditional ones. And this album is almost in its entirety, simply and clearly wrong.
When the demon that's inside you is ready to begin.
Full disclosure. I really like Disturbed, or at least I enjoy listening to them. I followed them up to 2010's Asylum, and then I lost track of them for a bit. When I saw the incredibly negative reaction this album received, it immediately piqued my interest, and I listened to it when it first came out and again now. Initially, for an album called Evolution, it's a bit ironic that, although it's their 7th release, the band plays more or less the same style as on their first record. A rather catchy, punchy alternative metal/hard rock that is primarily based on the vocal performance of frontman David Draiman. That style, when you hear it on 2, 3, maybe 4 albums, it's okay. When you reach the 7th album, well, even the most loyal fan is tired and bored. Especially if, as in here, the version of the classic Disturbed sound is one of the most pedestrian and bland they've ever released. Practically only the opener Are You Ready has something to say. However, What truly drags evolution down the drain is the band's obvious attempt to capitalize on the unexpected massive success of their cover of Sound of Silence in 2015. And so we have not one, not two, but four ballads, each cheesier than the previous one. So, yes, unfortunately, the haters were and are right. This album is garbage.
The party just switches up.
The truth is, I could put a lot of albums by our beloved Chris Barnes' band here, especially the Unspeakable Graveyard Classics cover albums. But seriously, can you tell me who was buying them and they ended up releasing three? But why bother with covers when there are original releases that are considered just as bad, if not worse? And we're not talking about just any release, are we? Just look at the ratings. Things are serious. Those of you who have listened to the album, even out of curiosity, know what I'm going to talk about. Not so much the music, which is an overly simplistic groove metal or old school death metal that can be tolerable in some cases. No, I'm going to talk about those vocals. Which one has to hear to believe, really? Tell me, none of the people surrounding the band could convince Chris Barnes that his vocals, especially those unlistenable shrieks, the infamous "ee" that even became a meme, sound completely ridiculous and that they should never have been released under the name of someone who was once one of the most distinctive frontmen of this genre? I honestly don't know how this thing was allowed to become public. Perhaps the only album in this series that is now crossing into the realm of the comedic.